Hello everyone, my name is Salvatore Di Costanzo and I'm an elder law estate planning attorney here in Yorktown Heights and Rye, located in Westchester County, New York. It's good to be able to speak to everybody again today. This is a continuation of our weekly video teleconferencing series, trying to educate everybody on the necessity to do their planning, especially during this pandemic, and also to talk to everyone about how easy it is to remotely do your estate planning. Today's April 23rd, and I look forward to working with anybody that might be listening to this conference. I'd like to start off by thanking all of our first responders, all of our physicians, nurses, the medical staff, medical profession, and all of those that assist the medical profession. The housekeepers, the janitors, the utility individuals, everybody that's in a facility that's doing something to benefit this cause. Thank you from the bottom of our heart. We appreciate everything that you do. So, at the risk of being repetitive, for those who may have already heard this, we've been getting a lot of calls since we started this series asking, how is it that you can actually sign these documents if we're at home and you're at home, Sal, that you're not in your office? And although we started these video conferences discussing remote estate planning, that the governor had signed certain executive orders allowing us to remotely sign your documents, it's still a little bit of a mystery to a lot of people. A lot of people are still anxious, uncertain, and therefore they're not proceeding. A lot of people recognize at this point the necessity for having good estate planning documents in place, a good power of attorney, a good healthcare proxy, a last will and testament, and perhaps certain types of trust. I've unfortunately had to work with a lot of families who have been inflicted by this virus, and in some cases, I can't help at the point somebody goes into a hospital. We're not allowed to go to the hospital. We're not allowed to go to a nursing home. I've got a couple of clients that are in nursing homes, and I'm unable to necessarily draft documents because we can't go there, and in most cases the facility is unwilling to participate in any type of signing, or the client himself or herself just can't comprehend what's going on because they might be on a vent or they might be medicated, etc. So I can't stress enough, you guys already know this, but I can't stress enough how important it is at all ages. I'm sad to say that I've got experiences right now with this pandemic with very young people and very elderly people. It does not discriminate. And if you lose your ability to handle your affairs, if you can't make your own medical decisions, or if, God forbid, you pass, we really need to have your affairs in order. We've gotten a bunch of estates over the last month where people did not have their affairs in order, and it's going to be a mess trying to work through these people's estates. So I'd like to first talk about what the mechanics look like to be able to sign your power of attorney, your healthcare proxy, your will, while you're sitting in your living room and I'm sitting someplace else. You're not going to be coming to my office. So what we do is we generally start by having a conference with you, just like we would in the office, except now it's by telephone. And we would discuss what your goals and objectives are. We'd put together the structure of what your estate plan needs to be. I might send you a questionnaire for you to fill. We would email you your documents, and you would review them, and you'd make comments. And we would schedule a time to do a remote video conference. We've been using Zoom technology. There's other forms of technology, Skype, and it's been working really well. So I would send you a link. You would click on that link. We would be able to now see each other through Zoom technology. And it's really no different than sitting in an office with me. And we can talk, and I found it to be very, I'm going to say touchy-feely, but I've been finding a closer connection with my clients. I've been finding that it's kind of nice to be able to sit here and look at your clients in an intimate setting, quite frankly. You might be sitting in your living room, and I'm sitting in my living room, and we talk, and we try to make light out of the situation. But it seems to be a very nice way of communicating, to be quite frank. And then what we do is you would print out the documents at your house, and we would start going through one by one each document. So let's say we start with the power of attorney. I would instruct you as to where to sign the power of attorney. And then myself and my colleague would act as witnesses remotely. The law allows us to be witnesses remotely. The law also allows us to notarize your documents remotely. So we would go through this signing process where you would sign your documents and we would witness it. And then when you're done, you would transmit those documents back to me. Now, how do you do that? Well, a lot of my clients have the ability to scan into their computer and email the documents back to me. Some of my clients take pictures of the documents with their cell phone. There are apps on the cell phone now that turn the picture into a PDF, and then you email that to me. Some of my clients, or a lot of my clients, are local. So there's no reason why we can't conduct the ceremony remotely, but then you drop the documents off at my office. We've got clients, we've been leaving the front door open. There's usually one person in the office, and you can just walk in and drop the documents off on the front desk. So there's a lot of ways to do this. And when that's all said and done, we notarize the documents, we sign them, and you have official documents. Your planning is in good order now by virtue of the executive orders that were signed by Governor Cuomo. So you don't need to worry. We can use these documents for all purposes going forward. Within 30 days after signing your documents, you should mail me the originals. Because then when we get the originals, we'll stamp those. We'll sign them, we'll stamp them. And now we've got a complete set of original documents. So it's really not that difficult to attend to a remote execution, if you would. And execution, I mean signing of documents. I don't mean, the guillotine. And we think that maybe, the executive order is going to expire at a certain point. Right now it's set to expire on May 15th. But perhaps there might be changes in the law thereafter. This might be a new way of doing business. Right now, under the current statutes, you can't do this. But maybe the executive order can be turned into a statute. So I think, remote technology is going to become important going forward. But the message that we're trying to get across to you, please take my advice. You cannot be without a power of attorney, a healthcare proxy, a last will and testament at this time. It is extremely important. I wish that everybody that hears this would call us, not from a salesman perspective, but so we can help you put your affairs in order, especially if you are elderly or if you have a young family. I've had unfortunately some instances over the last couple of weeks with young families. So we don't want that to happen to you, and we're here to help. I can't do any more than what I'm doing right now to convince you to call us and do your planning. So that's the procedure. Those are the mechanics for signing your documents remotely. Which documents are we talking about again? Well, again, at the risk of being repetitive, we want you to have a really good power of attorney. Now, what does that mean? We don't want you to have a boilerplate power of attorney. We don't want you to have a power of attorney that you printed off the internet or that you obtained from, let's say, a general practitioner attorney. Those powers of attorney, the standard form is very basic. What do I mean by that? We may have to move your assets around at some point if you lose your capacity. We may have to change beneficiary designations on your assets. We may have to do so many different types of things that result in a change in asset value in your name, moving you away from a bank account or a brokerage account, whatever it is. A standard form of a power of attorney does not allow you to do that. So if you appoint me as your agent, let's choose somebody else because I'm the attorney. If you appoint your best friend or your spouse as the agent under your power of attorney, they could sign your name, pay your bills, they could actually sell your house, they could do a lot of ministerial things. But it stops short of that. They can't move your money around. They could take the check from the sale of your house and deposit it into your bank account, but they can't do anything with it. They can't move your assets to themselves. They can't move the assets to kids. They can't move your assets to a trust. Why is this important? Because if, God forbid, you get sick, we may need to move your assets around to do certain types of planning, to protect your assets, and to get you the care that you need without wasting your assets. In order to be able to have those more sophisticated powers, we need to modify your power of attorney. We need to add those provisions into your power of attorney, like the power to make unlimited gifts, the power to create trust, the power to fund trust, the power to change beneficiary designations. All of these powers that we use on a regular basis from a planning perspective, that quite frankly are foreign to you. You don't recognize that you might need these things. Those are necessary. They must be added by the draftsman. And unfortunately, a lot of people that have powers of attorney that have not obtained them from an elder law attorney or an estate planning attorney, those powers of attorney are deficient. They're missing a lot of powers. They're almost useless in a lot of ways. So when I tell you that you need to get your power of attorney drafted, I don't mean just go get a form. And it's not good enough that you already have one, unless maybe you've gotten it drafted by an elder law or estate planning attorney. And you're free to email it to me if you want me to review it. My email address is smd@mfd-law.com. I'm happy to review your power of attorney, and I can tell you what I think about it. Your healthcare proxy is somewhat of a boilerplate form. You should have a good healthcare proxy, but they're very generic. I'm not going to spend a lot of time going back and forth over what that should say, but you should have one. You should have a healthcare proxy. And if you have any special wishes regarding the disposition of your remains, there's also a form that we can do for that. So perhaps you want to be cremated, and you want to make sure that those wishes are carried out. I can put that on a form for you. If you have particular wishes regarding your burial, I can put that on a particular form for you. If you want your eyes to be donated, if you want your organs to be donated, I can do all of that for you. So that's also extremely important. I once had a client that wanted to be buried with his pets. And you can do that now in certain pet cemeteries. And we drafted a form to specifically say that this is what needed to happen. And it was very unique. I've never done it before, and I haven't done it since. But you could do these things. You could also set up a trust for your pets. If you have a cat or a dog or a bird or a fish or whatever it is, and you really want to make sure that they're taken care of after your death, we could set up a pet trust under New York State law. So these things are very important, right? And then you should have a last will and testament. And if not a last will and testament, we might want to talk about a revocable trust. These documents pass your assets in accordance with your wishes upon your death. Everybody knows what a last will and testament is. And some of the things that you need to be aware of is that a last will and testament needs to be probated. So when you die, your family takes your will and goes to court. If you have assets that require probate, for instance, what does that mean? And you hear me saying, what does that mean all the time? Because that's what clients say to me. They say, Sal, I hear you saying this all the time, but what does it mean? Well, here's what that means. If you have a bank account that's got a joint owner, that bank account passes to the joint owner automatically. It doesn't need to go through probate. If you have an IRA or a life insurance policy that's got a beneficiary designation, doesn't need to be probated. It automatically goes to the beneficiary. But if you have a house with nobody on the deed, perhaps your spouse predeceased you, and there's nobody else on the deed, that doesn't go to somebody automatically. We have to probate to get the executor appointed, so that way the executor can transfer the house or sell it. Bank accounts, brokerage accounts that have just your name on it, we have to probate. So probate, it comes up often. Sometimes we want to avoid probate. Well, before I go there, let's stay on the will for a moment. Younger families, you need to have your will drafted so that way you can appoint a guardian over your minor children. That's extremely important. I just heard of a case 2 weeks ago where parents died and there's a minor child, and I hope that there was a will in place to appoint a guardian over the minor children. We don't want that to happen. You're also going to talk to me about leaving your assets to your children in trust. You don't want young children inheriting your assets and squandering those assets. So we can do that as well. Some of these things have to be done in a will. A revocable trust avoids probate. In today's day and age with this pandemic, ordinarily a probate proceeding would take about 2-3 months, let's say, to get through the courts. And then however long it takes us to administer the estate. Now the courts are closed for new matters. Non-essential matters, the courts are closed. When the courts reopen, I can only imagine what it's going to look like. And who knows how long that backlog is going to be in place. And again, I say this in every conference. Wonderful people in the surrogates court. Some of the brightest people I've ever worked with. This is somewhat out of their control, though. They're going to be overloaded and overwhelmed. You might want to consider drafting a revocable trust so that way your family does not have to go through the probate process. It's more time-consuming and more expensive to draft a revocable trust than a will, but in the long run, your family is going to save a lot of money and a lot of headaches. So we're doing more and more revocable trusts today to avoid probate, especially under the circumstances. You also want to be able to consider a revocable trust, or should I say it differently, a revocable trust is almost a necessity if you own property outside of New York State. Because if you own property outside of New York State, we're going to have to probate your will here and then go into that other state and probate your will again. We don't want to do that. So we put that property into a revocable trust and we avoid probate in both states. If you're setting up trust for minor children, like I just said, younger families, you probably want to talk to me about a revocable trust. If you have a disabled beneficiary, same thing. So a revocable trust is a really useful technique to avoid the hassles of probate. That's a pretty generic estate plan that I just described. Your power of attorney, your healthcare proxy, and your will or revocable trust. The final element that my senior clients should be thinking about, and I use the word senior because I'm just trying to create some sort of line of demarcation, but I would say if you're in your 60s and above, now don't get mad at me, don't start shooting me emails saying that 60 is old. It's not old. And I don't even think 70s and maybe even 80s today should not be considered old. But I have to draw some sort of line to distinguish, my younger generations versus my more senior generations. But you should be talking to me about the Medicaid trust. The Medicaid trust is the trust that we use largely to protect your house and maybe some other assets in case you get sick someday, in case you need nursing home care or home care. If that happens, we're likely going to be looking to apply for Medicaid. There's very few options to pay for your long-term care today. You would either pay for it yourself out of your own pocket, which is greatly expensive today. You might have long-term care insurance, which not many people have. You might have Medicare, which only pays for the first 100 days in a nursing home, and then you're left with Medicaid. Those are largely your 4 options to pay for your care. Let that sink in for a moment. I want you to digest that. If you get sick, you've got to pay for your care using one of those 4 options. Or you might pass and not need this. And it's important to do this type of planning because there's a look-back period. So for nursing home care, there's a 5-year look-back period. Recently, they just imposed a 2.5-year look-back period for home care. A lot of people don't know that. This is hot off the press. Beginning October 1st, if you apply for home care, Medicaid can look backwards 2.5 years. There never used to be a look-back period for home care. So we've got problems now. You guys have problems. You've got to plan. If you don't do the planning that I'm describing, you're going to be in a situation where you may not be able to apply for Medicaid. You don't have long-term care insurance, or some of you do, but maybe most of you don't. Medicare is not a great option. What's left? Paying for it out of your own pocket. And that's not what we want you to do. So the Medicaid trust is, something that we use on a regular, everyday basis, and you should contact me to talk more about that. So with that being said, these are the estate planning tools that we use on a regular basis. We are open, we are functioning, it's remote, but we're doing a great job at it. We're getting used to this. We got our legs underneath us. We're now a couple of weeks into it. It's not a problem. I really hope that you take me up on my advice to contact me, and I'm here to help. If you like these videos, I'd appreciate if you would share these videos. One, it helps me, but two, this is really important information. I'm repeating these basic video topics because they're important. I'm not moving on to more complicated topics because everybody needs to hear these basic topics. And sometimes you need to hear it more than once. So I'm not afraid to repeat these topics. I might not be doing it next week or the week after on the same topic, or maybe I will. I don't know. We'll decide. But I want you to share these because everybody out there right now should be calling me to do their planning. So if you want to reach out to me, my website is Plan Today for Tomorrow, all spelled out, Plan Today for Tomorrow. My phone number in the Rye office is 914-925-1010. My phone number in the Yorktown Heights office is 914-245-2440. I had already told you that my email address is smd@mfd-law.com. And in one way, shape, or form, you should be able to get in touch with me, and we're happy to help you. And so I look forward to working with all of you, and please send me your questions if you have any questions. Stay safe, stay healthy, and have a good day.